Have you ever felt hurt by the very people you love most? Today's story will take you through an emotional journey from pain and confrontation to forgiveness and healing. Don't miss a single moment. Follow it to the end to witness the true power of love and forgiveness. On an early autumn Sunday morning, Westmount was immersed in the gentle beauty of the sunrise. The ancient maple trees gradually turned shades of gold and red, adding a peaceful charm to this historic Montreal neighborhood. Amid that elegant and serene setting, the Cooper family's villa stood out with its classic, dignified architecture. The spacious, luxurious dining room was adorned with European-style antique furniture, from the polished oak dining set to the sparkling crystal chandelier hanging in the center. The soft autumn light streamed through tall windows, casting a warm golden hue over the room, creating a scene that was both intimate and stately. On the table, breakfast was presented impeccably: golden croissants, delicate slices of cold cuts, and fresh fruit arranged on a gleaming silver platter. Yet, the atmosphere wasn't purely one of familial warmth. A subtle tension lingered in the air. Laura Cooper, a youthful, beautiful woman exuding confidence in an elegant navy wool dress, gently lifted her teacup, striving to maintain a calm demeanor. Across from her sat Elizabeth Cooper, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression and an air of authority, dressed in a tweed jacket, her gaze sweeping over Laura with a scrutinizing edge. "Laura, did you make the quiche yourself today?" Elizabeth asked lightly, her tone laced with implication. Laura hesitated briefly, but quickly regained her composure, smiling as she replied, "Yes, Mother, I followed a recipe from a famous Montreal chef. I thought you might enjoy it." Elizabeth raised an eyebrow slightly, offering a faint, cool smile. "Well, it's decent, but it can't compare to Sophia's cooking back in the day. That girl always knew how to please me." Laura felt a jolt run down her spine, her hand holding the silver spoon trembling slightly, though she quickly steadied herself. Her husband, Jonathan Cooper, seated beside her, frowned faintly, as if he wanted to speak but held back. The atmosphere grew heavier by the moment until Sophie, Jonathan's younger sister, a cheerful, approachable pediatrician, jumped in to break the tension. "Laura, I could really use your help with the wedding preparations coming up. We're holding the ceremony at the Grand Church and the reception at the Ritz-Carlton, Montreal." Laura nodded, her grateful eyes turning to Sophie. "Of course, Sophie. I'd be happy to help with anything you need." Elizabeth set her delicate porcelain teacup down gently, casting a pointed glance at Laura. "But, my dear, I suppose you're not yet familiar with how we organize weddings in our family, are you? The traditional customs can be quite intricate, especially since we're under the spotlight of Montreal's elite." Silence fell over the room. Laura's heart beat faster. Jonathan glanced at his wife with concern, but once again, he said nothing. Sophie tried to ease the situation. "Mother, Laura's part of the family, and she has impeccable taste. Everyone praised her speech at the fundraiser last week." Elizabeth smiled faintly, though her icy eyes remained unchanged. "Of course, darling. It's just that we must preserve our traditional values." Laura took a deep breath, gently setting her teacup down and sitting up straighter. Despite her strong, successful persona in Toronto's financial world, deep inside, she felt like an outsider amid this refined gathering, masked with layers of decorum. Outside the window, the tranquil streets of Westmount seemed to witness the stirrings of an undercurrent, a simmering conflict everyone could sense but no one dared to name. Laura Cooper sat upright, her polite smile unwavering, though a clear spark of tension flickered in her deep blue eyes. At 30, Laura had built an admirable career in Toronto's financial sector. She stood out with her sharp intellect and confident demeanor. Yet her independence wasn't always welcomed in the prestigious Cooper household in Montreal. Across from Laura sat her mother-in-law, Elizabeth Cooper, the epitome of Montreal's traditional upper class. In her early 60s, Elizabeth maintained a refined, commanding presence, her keen eyes constantly observing and judging every minor gesture. Known for her conservatism and strict standards, she placed family reputation above all else. What should have been a peaceful Sunday breakfast quickly turned into a subtle battlefield, as Elizabeth deftly invoked memories of Sophia, the first wife she had adored. Elizabeth's gaze challenged Laura with refined provocation. "Laura, dear," Elizabeth began, her voice soft but edged with inherent coldness. "It mustn't be easy managing your work out there while adapting to our family traditions, must it?" Laura gently set her spoon down, careful not to let her hurt show. "I think I'm doing quite well, Mother. Of course, there's still much to learn, but I'm open to it." Elizabeth's lips curved into a slight smile, her skepticism unconcealed. Sophia always blended in perfectly. Even the smallest details, like breakfast, were prepared with astonishing care. "You know, Jonathan used to love those mornings." Elizabeth's words struck like an invisible dagger into Laura's pride. Yet, she maintained her calm smile, meeting Elizabeth's icy stare. "Everyone has their own way, Mother. Sophia had hers, and I have mine. What matters most is the genuine care we put into it, don't you think?" Jonathan, seated beside her, finally spoke up, attempting to diffuse the mounting tension. "Mother, I think Laura's trying hard to do her best. I wish you'd encourage her instead of always comparing her to Sophia. It's been long enough. Let the past rest." Elizabeth glanced at Jonathan, a flicker of unease crossing her face before her usual coolness returned. "I only want what's best for the family, Jonathan. We have a reputation and traditions to uphold. I don't want anyone, even Laura, to jeopardize that." Laura took a deep breath, the stifling pressure rising within her. She understood that no matter how hard she tried, Elizabeth would always see her as an outsider, forever inadequate for this family. Silence settled again, though the tension simmered beneath the surface. Laura quietly sipped her tea, suppressing her emotions. Sophie, sensing the worsening situation, quickly shifted the conversation. "Laura, I'm trying on wedding dresses next week. Will you come with me? I'd really love your advice." Laura nodded eagerly, grateful to Sophie for rescuing her from the fraught exchange. "Absolutely, Sophie. I'd be thrilled to help you pick out your dress." Elizabeth said nothing more, merely sipping her tea, though her displeasure was evident. Behind her poised, elegant exterior, she was quietly calculating ways to maintain control. Laura knew this, but she resolved not to let herself be broken by her mother-in-law's subtle pressures. Outside the window, maple leaves drifted gently to the ground, creating a beautiful yet fragile scene, much like the increasingly strained relationships within this prestigious home. As Sophie's wedding day approached, the tension within the Cooper family grew more palpable. Sophie, Jonathan's younger sister, was a pediatrician known for her warm heart and radiant smile. She adored Laura, treating her sister-in-law like a close friend, a dynamic that, unintentionally, unsettled Elizabeth. At the Ritz-Carlton, Montreal, the buzz of preparations for the lavish wedding filled every corner. Laura, dressed in a sophisticated office ensemble, stood confidently in the grand lobby, offering her input to the wedding planner, Claire. "I think cream tones paired with white roses would be perfect for the reception tables," Laura suggested gently but firmly. Claire nodded in agreement. "Absolutely, Mrs. Cooper. That's a very refined and elegant choice." Just then, a familiar cold voice cut through from behind. "Oh, Claire, I don't think Laura truly understands our family traditions well enough to make that call." Laura turned, her heart pounding, meeting Elizabeth's sharp, icy stare as she approached with her usual commanding air. Elizabeth continued in a soft but cutting tone, loud enough for all to hear. "White roses were used in Sophia's wedding before. Laura, perhaps you should pick something more suited to yourself." Laura froze for a moment, a flush of heat rising to her face, but she quickly composed herself, replying politely yet firmly, "I think traditions don't have to be rigid, Mother. What matters is that Sophie feels happy with the choice." Elizabeth's smile was cold. "Happiness is important, of course, but you must remember this isn't just a small party, it's the biggest wedding of the year in Montreal. The Cooper family can't afford thoughtless decisions." Jonathan appeared from the main entrance, immediately sensing the thick tension between the two most important women in his life. "What's going on, Mother?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. Elizabeth shook her head lightly. "Nothing. I'm just reminding Laura of the standards we've always maintained for family events." Jonathan sighed, giving his mother a pointed look. Mother, Laura's perfectly capable of handling things wonderfully. You should let her shine with confidence. Elizabeth's face flashed with displeasure, though she masked it quickly. If you trust her that much, I won't say more. But remember, our family's reputation wasn't built easily. After Elizabeth walked away, Jonathan turned to Laura, grasping her hand with concern. I'm sorry, Laura. Mother can be too harsh sometimes, but she doesn't mean ill. Laura offered a faint smile, her voice tinged with sadness. I understand, Jonathan, but you have to know how hard it is to be constantly undermined like this. I don't want to live in Sophia's shadow forever. Jonathan squeezed her hand gently. I know. I'll talk to Mother clearly. I don't want you to suffer like this anymore. Laura felt the sincerity in Jonathan's eyes, yet a lingering unease remained about the silent pressures from her mother-in-law. A few days later, during the wedding dress fitting, Elizabeth subtly maneuvered to sideline Laura from Sophie by arranging for her to handle separate tasks with vendors, keeping her away from the key decisions. Laura noticed but stayed quiet, swallowing her disappointment. Sophie, realizing Elizabeth was deliberately excluding Laura, confronted her mother directly. Mother, I really need Laura involved in my wedding preparations. She's so important to me, why do you keep pushing her away? Elizabeth replied coolly. I'm just trying to protect your wedding from unnecessary mistakes, Sophie. Laura doesn't belong to our world. The sooner you see that, the better. Sophie was stunned by her mother's sharp words. She looked at Elizabeth with disappointment. You're wrong, Mother. You're the one making the mistake here. Elizabeth didn't respond, turning to leave. But a storm of emotions brewed within her, signaling an inevitable escalation of tension in the Cooper family. Sophie's wedding day arrived, and the Ritz-Carlton Montreal buzzed with the grandeur of the occasion. Over 200 distinguished guests from Montreal's most prominent families to close friends gathered to celebrate the momentous event. Laura, as a bridesmaid, looked stunning and elegant in a sapphire blue evening gown. Yet, she could still feel Elizabeth's cold gaze tracking her every move. As the reception began, exquisite dishes were served at the tables. Everything was flawless except for Laura's place, which remained conspicuously empty. Confused, she quietly asked a waiter, Excuse me, it seems I haven't received my meal. The waiter hesitated, glancing at the manager, and then at Elizabeth, who smiled with chilling calm. Elizabeth spoke up softly, but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Laura, you should feel lucky to even sit at our table. Don't ask for too much. A suffocating silence fell over the room. Curious and shocked eyes turned toward Laura, who struggled to contain the fury blazing inside her. Jonathan, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger, stood abruptly. Mother, what are you doing? This is unacceptable. Elizabeth regarded Jonathan coolly, her voice eerily calm. Jonathan, I'm just protecting our family. You should know that. Laura took a deep breath, rising slowly. She met Elizabeth's gaze with unwavering resolve. No, Mother, I've had enough. If you can't accept me as part of this family, I won't keep trying. The room fell silent, the only sound the stunned gasps of guests. Laura continued, her voice clear and steady, unshaken. Jonathan, I love you, but I can't keep living with this constant disrespect and insult. We should get a divorce. Jonathan stood frozen, while Elizabeth, for the first time, showed visible confusion and helplessness. Sophie's eyes welled with tears as she stood to comfort Laura. Laura walked away from the table with pride and pain, leaving behind an Elizabeth who finally glimpsed the true consequences of her actions. In the dazzling light of the Ritz-Carlton, the Cooper family's perfect facade shattered, exposing the deep cracks within. After Laura's resolute declaration, Jonathan rose, his eyes blazing with unprecedented anger. He turned to his mother, his voice ringing out, cutting through the heavy silence enveloping the hall. Mother, what you just did was cruel and unforgivable. You always talk about family honor, but you're the one destroying it. Elizabeth opened her mouth to retort, but Jonathan cut her off, his voice thick with fury and pain. You've always tried to control my life, forcing me to meet your unreasonable standards. But this time is different. I won't stand by and watch you insult Laura, the person I love most. Elizabeth glanced around, noticing the judgmental, prying eyes of friends and colleagues fixed on her. The perfect, powerful image she'd upheld for so long began to crumble. Whispers spread, and some guests quietly slipped out, a wave of ostracism taking hold. By the next day, news of Elizabeth's behavior spread like wildfire through Montreal's elite circles. The phone stopped ringing, invitations to parties and events dwindled and then ceased entirely. Elizabeth slowly realized that the status she'd built over decades was collapsing beyond repair. Jonathan, though heartbroken, stood firmly by Laura. One evening, as Elizabeth sat alone in the vast living room, Jonathan appeared in the doorway, his eyes filled with disappointment and pain. "Mother, I need you to understand that what you didn't just hurt Laura. It hurt me too. You've lost my trust." Elizabeth looked at her son, her voice trembling with rare emotion. "I only wanted what's best for you, Jonathan, but maybe I was wrong not to see Laura's true worth." Jonathan shook his head, his tone resolute. "Mother, if you really want what's best for this family, you need to change. And you should start by accepting and respecting Laura as she deserves." Elizabeth watched Jonathan leave the room, a wave of loneliness and loss washing over her. In the days that followed, she sank into remorse. Sleepless nights haunted her with memories of her harsh words and actions. After days of solitary torment, Elizabeth finally sought help from a renowned Montreal psychologist. In deep, revealing sessions, she began to uncover the roots of her insecurity and obsession with perfection that had unwittingly hurt those she loved most. Gradually, Elizabeth grasped the consequences of the stubbornness and rigidity she'd once deemed family values. One late afternoon, sitting alone in the quiet living room, she gazed at the family photos on the bookshelf, especially a joyful picture of Jonathan and Laura from their wedding day. Tears welled up, regret and guilt streaming down her cheeks. "I was so wrong," she whispered through choked sobs. "Everything I tried to protect is what I've been destroying." From that moment, Elizabeth knew she had to act to right her wrongs. The first step was a sincere apology to Laura and Jonathan, embarking on a long, challenging journey to mend the family she'd unintentionally broken. Elizabeth embarked on a long, arduous journey to heal the wounds she'd inflicted. She turned to Dr. Marie Tremblay, a celebrated Montreal psychologist known for her deep empathy and effective therapy. Weekly sessions with Marie allowed Elizabeth to truly confront herself for the first time, peeling away layers of her perfect, powerful facade. In the warm therapy room, she realized her harshness stemmed from a fear of losing control, from the pressure to maintain an impeccable image in society's eyes. "Elizabeth, Tremblay said gently one chilly afternoon, "you've built your life on others' expectations. Perhaps it's time to live authentically, to allow yourself vulnerability and honesty." Elizabeth quietly wiped away rare tears, nodding faintly. "I really want to change. But will they forgive me?" Dr. Tremblay smiled softly, resting a hand on Elizabeth's. "Start with your most heartfelt apology. That's the first step to repairing the relationships that matter most in your life." After many nights of reflection, Elizabeth resolved to write letters to Laura, Jonathan, and Sophie. Each word she penned was steeped in sincerity, expressing deep regret and a longing for forgiveness. As she sealed the envelopes, Elizabeth felt a weight lift from her heart, as if she'd finally shed the last mask she'd worn for years. Snow fell gently over Montreal, blanketing everything in a pristine, peaceful white. Standing by the large window of her solitary villa, Elizabeth gazed out at the quiet street. The warm, golden glow of streetlights illuminated the fresh snow, crafting a scene both poetic and tinged with melancholy. Elizabeth clutched the 3 letters she'd just finished. Heartfelt apologies to Laura, Jonathan, and Sophie. Every word carried her genuine remorse and hope that her family might forgive and reunite with her. "I don't know if they'll forgive me," she murmured, her eyes fixed on the snow blanketing Montreal's streets. "But at least I've faced the truth, faced the mistakes I've made." A gentle peace spread through her heart, unfamiliar yet profound. Elizabeth donned a thick coat and stepped into the cold, snowy night, heading toward the mailbox outside her home. The moment she placed the letters inside, a warmth bloomed within her. She looked up at the dark sky, snowflakes still falling softly, carrying whispers of a new beginning. Elizabeth vowed to herself that this would be a new chapter, one where love and sincerity took precedence, and the masks of society were forever set aside.